Welcome to Deep Work Out Loud, the thinking that fuels our life, our work, and our leadership. I'm Julie Harris-Oliver. This is the podcast where I sit with another professional coach and we do some work around a single idea, a piece of inspiration, something we've been thinking about a lot. And if we're really lucky while we're talking about it, we might get a couple minutes of coaching so you can see what that might look and feel like. But we'll see how it goes. It's an experiment. With any luck, you will leave with something you can apply and use in your work or your life or both. Today, I'm here with Krista Johnson. Krista is an organizational psychology practitioner and executive coach, known for her passion for human behavior, adult learning, and transformative leadership. She currently leads organizational development and executive coaching at Saks Global for Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus, and Bergdorf Goodman, where she built the company's first internal coaching practice and partners directly with senior officers. Krista holds undergraduate degrees in anthropology and world religion, pursued master's studies in human dynamics and counseling psychology, and earned her ICF credential at the Hudson Institute of Coaching, and is a certified Enneagram and Fierce Conversations practitioner. Fierce Conversations practitioner. I want to hear all about that. She lives in Dallas with her partner, Kayla, and their Shih Tzu mix Ming, and can often be found exploring art, food, and global travel. Welcome, Krista.
Thank you, Julie. So good to be with you.
Thanks so much for doing this.
I know. I'm so thrilled.
Okay, so before we dig in, what was your journey to becoming a coach? And also, what is Fierce Conversations about?
Okay, well, I'll start with Fierce Conversations first. That's probably an easier one. But this is a concept idea by Susan Scott. And it's the idea that if we have the courage to talk about the thing, say the thing out loud, and do it from a place of heart and intention, it can change lives, it can change relationships, it can repair teams, repair organizations. So it's all about finding the courage to say what we need to say out loud.
Beautiful. If only we could all do that all the time.
I know. I love that. And it's a wonderful book. So I highly recommend that book, Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott.
Okay.
My journey to coaching, I think really coaching found me. I didn't I didn't find coaching. I look back over my career and I had moments as in the mental health space, I had moments in the L&D space. And as I reflect back, it was almost as if all of these little stepping stones were leading me to coaching with me not even really realizing it. And so as I found myself really enjoying leaning into the mental health space and understanding human behavior, there was also something missing for me. I think my heart was fulfilled in that space, but my head was a little bit bored and I needed more stimulation. So I found myself in the corporate behavior, human behavior space, and then realized after having a coach myself, oh, this is what this all means. This is this moment to sit with another person, hold space in a corporate environment, and do some really meaningful work that has the power to transform, again, lives and transform organizations, transform teams. So I decided to pursue Hudson a couple years ago, and it was the best decision I had made is to pursue my coaching certification.
Yeah, wonderful. It never ceases to surprise me, like what a rich playground work is for our personal development. Okay, what did you want to bring to talk about today?
So I had, when you and I were chatting originally, I had all these ideas, and I remember you and I connected over one, and it both kind of lit up around one, which was heart wounds and leadership. And
Yeah.
so that continues to show up in my work, and it's something I've been playing around with a little bit. It's not a new or novel idea. Many thought leaders have written on the piece, but I'm starting to see these heart wounds be present in how we run our teams, how we run ourselves in the corporate space. And I think it's a rich conversation to have.
Okay, where do we begin?
Well, okay, let's start with maybe what a heart wound is.
Yeah.
Could that be helpful? So when I think about a heart wound, I think about something that's maybe an unresolved emotional imprint, something from a past experience that maybe shapes how we show up or how a person really protects themselves in the present. So it's something from the past that we're bringing into the present. And, in psychological terms, it's really reflects a learned pattern, right? It's a learned pattern in our nervous system. And it's something in our core beliefs that really once served us. It served us, and there was an adaptive purpose of why we had that wound or that way of thinking or being. But now it really starts to, what I see, really constrain flexibility or constrain connection, constrain growth. And We really carry them silently, but they shape our behavior, they shape our relationships.
I think so often we are completely unaware of them,
Mhm. Yeah.
but it's something that may really have helped you when you were a child or at some point in your life that was the greatest thing that you ever did because it helped you survive whatever the thing is. But then
100.
realizing as an adult, oh, that's not actually helping. In this moment, it's actually hurting me.
No, and you're 100% right. They really are early life experiences. They come from, whatever happened, that core wound in childhood, or even just our way of being in our internal family system. But they shape our beliefs about safety, about worthiness, about belonging, about trust. But again, you're so right. At one point, they really were helpful for us. But I think as leaders and as adults, we have to decide, is this wound, what work do I need to do to heal this wound? And is this way of being, this way of thinking, this way of existing serving me or disserving me?
So it might be an example. We're talking really broad terms right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'll see wounds show up in things like overfunctioning or over responsibility, right? Maybe emotional distancing or guardedness.
Mm.
Maybe that can look like hyper independence or perfectionism in a work environment. It can also look like maybe approval seeking or conflict avoidance. Another one is difficulty trusting or delegating, like it needs to be all me. My heart wound personally is hypervigilance. I grew up in a home that was kind of a chaotic home. And although my parents did a wonderful job and, raised us and my brother, and we had a wonderful life, there was emotional dysregulation in my home. And what that did for me is it taught me to scan my environment and scan for how the adults were so I could orient myself and I could survive in my system. Right. And so
Mhm.
looks like today, and it's something I work on with my own coach and I have to constantly be aware of, is over scanning my environment, over orienting myself to keep myself safe, when that takes a lot of my mental capacity that I could be using for strategy or visioning or connecting with my team. But instead, I'm in here scanning and trying to be vigilant. And so that is a heart wound that, again, I'm continuously working to heal and to move from,
Right. And calling it empathy
and calling it empathy. The
so
reframe.
many times. Yeah.
Yeah, the reframe.
Okay, so a lot of those things you mentioned early on, the overperforming, the independence, like all of those things, so often are so rewarded at work. So then how do you find the spot between sometimes that really serves you and that gets you to a high level as opposed to that's really getting in your way of who you want to be and how you want to show up?
Life is so funny, right? Our life follows these universal laws around polarity. We have North Pole, South Pole, night and day. Like it just is. That's just around us in our universe. And I see that same polarity in our human behavior. What serves us can equally disserve us. And I talk about that a lot in coaching. I'm sure you do too. And as we manage ourselves, but also as coaches, as we work with our clients to understand, where has this behavior moved from service to disservice, and where may this be an overfunctioning competency or capability, and is this way of being, this belief system, this way of thinking, is this serving the life that my client says she wants, or the goal that my client says he's trying to achieve? And then how do we start to do some work around untangling, like untangling the belief system that has kept that wound packed, you know, packed in there and safe.
Tighten the way.
Yeah.
Can we talk about how you might start to identify that and then untangle it?
Yeah. So when I think about identifying it for myself, it's just getting really clear and present around, and almost like looking at my life zoomed out, and being able to look down on my life and saying, is this way of being serving me? Right. So getting really clear and honest with myself and doing that in partnership with a coach. Same thing, obviously as coaches in the work that we do, and getting really connected and asking meaningful questions with our clients. Now I forgot the question that you asked me.
How do you identify that this is a thing that is a heart wound that I'm reacting to?
Hmm. I think it's through observation, through really tough questions and asking yourself, in this moment, was I on autopilot or was I showing up in an intentional way? So, for example, what I know about my own heart wound, as I shared a moment ago, is that hypervigilance. And so I know my autopilot, if left unchecked, is going to be in the space of hypervigilance.
Hmm.
So the ability to interrupt that autopilot and say, I want to make a different choice and I want to do something differently. I don't know, honestly, Julie, if I would have been able to uncover my own heart wound without the help of coaches and practitioners and people who I could really trust, because it really required me to have meaningful conversations and look at my life critically and my way of being and showing up. But once I was able to open up and find a practitioner and a coach that I really trusted, from there, it's okay. Now there's a quote. I don't know who said it, but once you know, it's hard to pretend that you don't know, right? So
Once you know better, you have to do better.
once you know better, you have to do better. And I can't pretend that I don't know this now. I know this about myself. We've named it. We've named that it's hypervigilance. So from there, what do I do with it?
Right. What do you do with that?
It is a constant empathy, showing empathy for myself,
Hmm.
showing myself that empathy, that I so freely show to others. And so when I have a moment, when a leader that's in my care has a moment and they're not showing up in the way that they wanted to, it's observing the behavior really through a non-judgmental lens. Like, let's look at this almost like we're investigators. Let's inspect reality. What was the situation? What was the action? What was the result? And how do we look at that, suspend judgment, and decide to make a different choice?
This really strikes me as a cultural shift in work, right? And in companies, when we've gone from such a direction and control, please be a robot as much as possible at work, to really coming into, heart-centered, heart-led leadership.
Mhm.
What do you think about that?
I think it's worthy. It's a worthy work. I'm in it every single day. And so I may be a little biased, but it is a shift and it's a needed shift. Leaders are craving connection, they're craving understanding, they're craving rhythm in their work. And we need each other really in the workplace now more than ever, especially in my workplace. There's significant change, significant uncertainty. The macroeconomic environment is not helpful or kind to luxury retail right now.
Mm-hmm.
A merger and acquisition, all the complex things that come with that. And heart-centered leadership and having a reflective practice, right? To know what is important to me, what values do I want to embody, being able to reflect on how we're showing up as leaders and being able to then connect with other people around that is, to me, critical right now. And that's what we're really trying to do in a lot of the programs that I'm leading within my system, is how do we help leaders wrestle with those enduring human capabilities that aren't soft skills like strategic thinking and strategic communication, but more about personal agility, emotional regulation, reflective practice. And so it's a shift, a needed shift.
For sure, especially considering, AI is coming in so fast and it's not going to do this part. The world is literally on fire everywhere we look.
Mm.
And we still want people to come to work and do their best and be emotionally regulated and lead people through all the strategic things that need to happen so fast in order to be effective. It is, I just want to echo, it is such worthy work and so important.
It is. And I was even just yesterday in a conversation I was having with an executive. We were talking about presence
Hmm.
and being in our bodies, and how so much of our days, being senior executives in a really competitive, fast-paced, moving organization and industry, our days are spent from here up. I am here up most of the time. And we
And
were
if you're just listening, that is like chin
oh,
to the top of your head.
yes, yes, yes. So it's that collarbone, that chin to the top of the head. I'm in my thinking center.
Yeah.
And it takes conscious and intentional work to drop into my body. And we were talking about little things we can do just to maintain presence as leaders, like feel our feet in our shoes or put our feet, both feet on the ground while we're having a conversation. And those little things in themselves, they are not groundbreaking, but for corporate leaders to start in the workplace, for us to be talking about embodiment and us to be talking about presence. Like 10 years ago, when I was leading L&D programs at another luxury,
Nope.
those words were not even in my vocabulary to even think that they would have been brought into the workplace. So
No.
the system is demanding it. And although I have at times been labeled a little woo-woo in the workplace, my executive population is responding really well to this.
Yeah, I bet. I'm in LA right now where woo-woo is the baseline. Everything else grows from that. And it sounds like it all really comes down to, as you said, presence. And we've talked a lot about presence on this podcast, but you really can't go through work or life or anything on autopilot anymore.
Mm-mm.
It's just not going to work.
It's not. Our old ways of being, and we think about heart wounds, the ways that we think about adolescence, the way of being, the way of thinking that protected us in adolescence, then protected us maybe in our early 20s and shielded us as we were learning about the world and deciding who we wanted to be in the world and all of these things. And now we find ourselves in these corporate careers, or we find ourselves as a coach spending time with people in these environments. Those old ways of being, they're not enough. Not only are they not enough, they really leave us feeling empty and burnt out and disconnected from each other. And so when I think about being a coach and how important this work is, I think about helping our clients, sense the world around them, get off of autopilot, but realize what tools they have in their tool belt to do things differently, to kind of match this complex environment. And to your point, that AI is not going to do for us.
No, no. So how do you start to work with executives or leaders that is not, because this could go super therapy direction,
Yeah.
right? And we're not trying to do that at work. So then how do you work with people to kind of define the heart wounds, catch it, and then what sort of practices
Yeah.
put in place?
Yeah. So I think as we start to explore belief systems, right? And we're not touching internal family system work, or we're not touching any of that those therapeutic ways of being, but it is appropriate, as you know, in our coaching conversations to start to understand, like, where do you think that belief came from? And do you feel like that belief is self-limiting, or does that support the person that you want to be today? So as you start to untangle that, some words will start to pop out, right? Their own words that you can then, as a practitioner and as a coach, start to put into categories, right? So if you start to see things like perfectionism, or you start to see things like hyperindependence, and helping them name it. The power in helping someone name maybe what they're experiencing. And this isn't diagnosing, right? Our work
Right.
is not to diagnose, and this isn't pathology, but this is naming the thing, seeing if oh yeah, that is what I'm experiencing, or that does connect to my experience, and then creating the container that we can just explore and play, right? We create the container to play around with that thing.
Yeah. And was that thing even mine to begin with? Or have I been carrying around this thing that it's actually someone else's?
Oh, say more about that, because that is
Um,
really interesting.
I'm I'm thinking about a particular client where so many of the way they were behaving based on the beliefs that they have, as soon as we started picking them apart, they weren't their beliefs at all. They were their parents' beliefs
Mm,
that they hadn't yet taken the time to consider, do I want to actually adopt that for myself? Or am I just going to act on autopilot because that's what I heard all my life?
100%.
So then interrupting that and realizing how limiting those beliefs were because they weren't even that person's.
Right. Right. They weren't even mine to begin with. And
Right.
to exist in the system. I think that's the other thing too we forget is we are
Yeah.
part of so many systems. And so are the leaders that I coach, their home system, their past systems, their current systems. And as we start to untangle things, we have to decide, what did I take on so I survived in that system?
Hmm.
I'll work with leaders who are showing up almost in fight or flight. And,
Sure.
I'll ask questions, and sometimes we'll uncover that, yeah, the current situation they're in is really, their nervous system is shot as a result of that. And other times we'll unpack that, oh no, that's an old tape I've been playing. That is something that a leader said to me one time, maybe gave me feedback that I'm too much, I'm too bold, I talk too much. And now I've carried that with me as a rock in my backpack. And we get to collectively in that container that we're playing around decide, not only do I want to take that rock out of my backpack, I'm putting my backpack down altogether. I'm not
Yeah.
carrying that anymore.
I noticed for myself, I was in a job, probably my last corporate job, where I was in a situation and I found myself really reacting
Mhm.
emotionally, angry, freaked out. It was from 3 jobs ago, that
Yeah.
reaction. And then I had to really like, wait a minute, that is not happening right now. That is old,
So
old, old.
I know it's an old tape, but it's so real because our nervous system doesn't, if we haven't healed or found a way to regulate from that past experience, it's still so present. It's still so real.
Wow.
I'm living something similar right now. I have a new leader in my current role, and Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram practitioner. So if anyone who's listening likes the Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 3 and he's an Enneagram 9. And Enneagram 3s, we have this drive to succeed, competitive achiever, a drive toward action, go, go, go. And a significant amount of my life, I've been rewarded for that speed
Sure.
and that way of being, but that served me and equally disturbed me. There was a lot of things that weren't supportive in my behavior in that way. And, my new leader, he's an adaptive peacemaker with the core motivation to keep the peace and to maintain harmony. And I will tell you, every conversation that I have with him, it's like I take a deep breath, if that makes sense. Don't
Mm-hmm.
like has the pedal on the gas. That's healing to me. And I need to tell him that. I haven't told him that yet. Maybe
Just
podcast.
end of this.
Yeah, I'll just send him the podcast, but that's the flip side of this, right? Yes, we may have these wounds, but when we find ourselves in community with people that are so different than us and encourage us to like have a different way of being, how healing that can be. We know we heal in community. And so that's allowing me to slow down and be really present. And I want our leaders to have more experiences like that.
And then I'm wondering, as you're talking about this, how much of this work, this isn't going to be the right question, how much of this work can you do if you're still in an environment that isn't really conducive to it, where there's still a lot of adaptive behavior because of the environment you're in? I know there's a certain amount you can do yourself, but you're still going to be so affected by the culture around you. So, what do you think about that? What's the right question I'm trying to ask you right now? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that is the right question because in a perfect world, we would be in systems that are healthy with beautiful
Yeah,
cultures and we all have reflective
and
practices. And
everyone's done their work.
everyone is in the work and they're doing the work and they're committed. My dad has a quote and he said to me since I was little, and it is the water only sinks the ship if it gets inside the ship. And I come from a long Navy family.
Oh,
So I'll say that again. Water only sinks the ship if it gets inside the ship. And I think about that a lot. The news, the world around us, the state, I'm LGBTQ, my partner and I, we constantly are talking about, is it safe for us? What is
yeah.
this like for us right now? Will we be able to get married? What does that look like? And what I realize is that that's the water, right? The water
Mm.
underneath us is the world. It's the systems, it's the world around us, but we are the ship and all we can control is how we ride on the waves of life. And sometimes it'll be calm and sometimes the waves will be huge and sometimes we'll take on water, but we need healthy practices and connections and emotional regulation in order to keep the water, the majority of the water on the outside of the ship, right? So
I'm also thinking, and sometimes you have to man the battleship.
ooh, like get in the front and steer it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking all the water that you're describing, like, because I struggle with this right now because, as you said, we need to regulate ourselves and be present when all of this craziness is happening out in the world. And we also still, I think, have a responsibility to affect that craziness out in the world.
Mhm.
And so, how do you find that balance between manning the battleship and battening down the hatches?
That's right. When is it safe to continue this metaphor to pop up and resist?
Hmm.
When is it safe to or when does the situation call to kind of take cover? There's seasons in life, right? There's different situations. And I think coaching allows us to figure out what tools do we have in our tool belt to what I'm kind of playing around right now. And I know there's probably a different way to say this or a better way, but almost meet the moment or match the moment in front of us and to read the moment in front of us with open eyes and be able to see, is this moment, this system that I'm in, this work situation with my leader, this, conflict I'm having with a colleague, is this about me right now? What role do I play? What is mine to own and what is not mine to own? And that's where that reflective practice comes in. And I think that's that ability to ride the wave and decide, what am I putting in my backpack and what am I not?
Mm-hmm. Can you share with us a technique that you share to interrupt that initial reaction so that you can be reflective and kind of take a breath before you react?
Yeah. I think it all depends on the individual. As you know, so many different people need different tools in their tool belt. But that one I just shared earlier, building on that around just the presence piece. If I notice in myself that there's a conversation I'm having or there's a situation at hand, I'm starting to move into hypervigilance, or I'm starting to feel that panic of like, I don't know what's going on, what they're thinking or feeling emotionally. I need to read the room, feel my feet in my shoes, take a beat, take a deep breath, and think of my tool belt. I consciously think of my tool belt. What tools do I have in my tool belt right now? One of those tools is breathing. I'm going to bring that tool out. Or another tool is I'm going to move from what I feel to what I know. Right now, I feel like I'm not in control and that there's a lot of emotions happening and I'm not able to fully get my footing here with what's happening. But what do I know to be true? What I know to be true is I'm safe. My job is safe. Everything's okay. So I think some of those tactics and working with our leaders to figure out what's going to be the thing for them. What tools do they really need? But it's not really fancy. It's just give yourself a second before you react. Decide, I'm going to give myself some space before I commit that, throw that rock in my backpack, decide something is mine to act on.
Yeah. And it really can be so simple. When you were saying about feeling my feet in my shoes, it reminded me of that positive intelligence course.
I don't know.
Oh, shoot. I can't remember the guy's name. Anyway, positive intelligence is the course. And he talks about just feeling the fingerprints on your fingers. Like just taking a moment to feel the ridges of your fingerprints. Like it's so simple, but it immediately takes you into your body in a really simple, small little way.
And sometimes that's all we need. We need just a little interruption of autopilot so that way we can make a different choice or operate from a healthier, I guess, more regulated place. I love that one. There's so many good techniques. I have someone on my team and we talk about this a lot, is we need to move the thought through our bodies, right? So if I'm in a meeting and maybe it's complex and maybe there's differing opinions and we're trying to navigate something, maybe we're lacking resources. After that meeting, even just a minute, I'll be a minute late to my next meeting, but I need to get up and physically do a lap around my house. And these little innocuous things that really mean nothing on their own. As you add them up over time, they contribute to someone who is more present, more in our bodies, more able to really weather those storms. But it's not easy. Like it obviously takes intention and practice and commitment to it.
And the more that you can do it yourself, the more it affects everybody else around you, because it does change the space that you're sitting in to hold that present energy.
Yeah, that's a really good point, especially on teams. If leaders practice this and then demonstrate this for their teams, we really have a responsibility, those of us who are people leaders, to be not only doing this work for ourselves, but doing this work for others. And I saw a meme on Instagram the other day that said leadership requires emotional regulation.
100%.
And I really believe that in order to be a successful leader, and success I'm going to put in quotation marks because whatever that means to you, but to be a present leader, to be an impactful leader, to be a leader who has empathy for others, first having that presence with ourselves.
Because we all know the CEO who has no self-regulation and flies off the handle and is a little bit crazy and makes everybody nuts and nervous and not doing their best work. and then doing the extra layer of work to try to calm that person down.
Yeah.
Like, to me, I see that now and I'm like, oh man, that's so irresponsible. Like, how
Well,
you got to handle yourself.
I know, and I see this too, and I hope that there'll start to be a shift in this direction as, we promote individuals that are really incredible individual contributors, or
Mhm.
they're experts at the work that they do. And we don't stop to look at where are their people leadership competencies? Where is their personal ability competency? Where is their emotional regulation competency? What does that look like? So we promote and we promote and we reward and we reward. And then we have these executives who are fabulous at what they do and true experts. But then there's all of these people left in their wake. And in fact, Fierce Conversation, Susan Scott says when you interact with someone, you have really three choices. You can leave them in an afterglow, with an aftertaste, or in an aftermath.
Oh, say that again.
So you can leave people in with an afterglow, with an aftertaste, or in an aftermath. And those are really the choices. Are people better after the conversations that you have with them and the moment you're with them? Are they left feeling a little uncertain about what just happened? Like
Like,
they weren't you, like a little aftertaste? Or did they crumble? Did your presence or the way you reacted or the way you treated them or whatever it was, did it leave them in an aftermath? And I do see that with executives who haven't really worked on presence and emotional regulation, that there's aftermath, there's bodies in their wake. And that's what we hope to work on. That's what I hope to work on with young practitioners. I'm hoping to get to these managers, these first-time managers, and start teaching these critical competencies now. So that way we have embodied leaders later in life.
well, that's the time to do it. That's when they need it so much, when they're bumped up to suddenly they're managing people, and who's ever told them how to do that?
I know. I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay, what have I not asked you about this topic that you'd like to share?
I think as coaches, I think I've already shared this, but just to double down on this, when we are able to help our clients maybe name the heart wound, right? And we create the safety to really explore that, that's when we're able to see that expansion, right? That's when I see that presence can deepen for them. That's when I see that their courage will strengthen. That's when I see that relationships can become more authentic. Leaders really can start to respond instead of react. They can interrupt autopilot. But there's so much from our childhood and from our first career moments that are shaping how we as leaders are showing up at work today. And I think it's like you said, it's worthy work, and it deserves a second look, and it deserves the space to really explore and play.
And it can create monumental shifts.
Yes.
I used to say in meetings that was not very popular because it was 10 years ago. And I would say, you guys, we've made all of this up. Like, this is all important because we've all agreed it's important, but really we're all here to help each other and work out our stuff in responsible ways.
Yes. We are all just adults, like little kids in adult bodies, figuring this out. None of us have been in these bodies in this lifetime, at this age, at this moment. No, I truly believe no one really knows what they're doing. And I think we're all
Amen.
I'm playing executive every day. Like that's
Everybody is.
we all
Everybody is.
figuring it out as we go. And when we can just all acknowledge that and accept that, hopefully some of the ego can crumble away a little bit. And like you said, we could just be together and help each other work out our stuff. I love that.
Yeah. It's so true, because I remember coming up and being like a manager level and seeing the VPs and thinking they were, so wise and had it together. And then I became one and I was like, everybody was lying.
Or have you seen that quote that talks about, like, I wanted to be in the room so badly. And then when I got in the room, it's like, this is what happens in the room?
That was terrible.
Maybe I don't want to be in the room anymore. So yeah, it's such a journey.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. I love this work so much. I appreciate you.
This has been Deep Work Out Loud. I'm Julie Harris Oliver. I'd like to thank Krista Johnson for joining the podcast. If any of this resonates with you, please subscribe, leave a review at all the podcast places. And if you'd like to work with me, you can find me at julieharrisoliver.com. And let me leave you with this invitation. What might it look like for you to spend some time noticing how you react to things at work? And when you have a big reaction, what would happen if you just took a minute to breathe and reset? Try one of the techniques we talked about. Try some things and report back. Thanks for listening. See you next time.